In this video, we want to discuss some possible explanations for fan behavior. As we begin this discussion, I want to point out that the purpose here is not to find the one and only correct behavior. Most of the scholarship on fandom draws on a lot of different theories and explanations, but we just want to try to understand the range of ways of understanding what fans do. And so we want to start first with some different psychological theories. The first of these is fantasy theory. This often develops from the work of Sigmund Freud, who made connections between our desires and our fantasies. We often expressed our desires through fantasy. So fantasy serves as basically a mediator between the subject and their wishes. So you may not ever always be able to obtain what you're desiring or express the desire itself directly, and so fantasy is a way of kind of engaging with that. And we mentioned slash fiction in the last video, that pairing of characters from a property who aren't all romantically connected in the work itself. We mentioned that a lot of these focus on sort of LGBT gay relationships between straight characters in the text, so Kirk and Spock is the primary one. But one of the interesting things is that most of the people writing this fan fiction are straight women. This isn't about gay men writing about their dissatisfaction with the lack of representation in works like Star Trek. It's mostly straight women writing and consuming this media. And so the question would be, why are straight women writing about gay men in relationships? And one of the things that fantasy theory offers is that a lot of these stories are not about trying to understand or represent gay relationships. That what these stories are actually about is about women trying to work through their feelings about men. Particularly, these stories can be seen as a desire for men to be romantically vulnerable. This isn't something you see a lot of, both in everyday life but also in media. You don't see a lot of men being vulnerable in romantic relationships. But if you pair two men together in a story, then one of them will have to take on the slightly more feminine role, and so he will be more vulnerable. And so you can see a man behaving that way, and that may be something that a lot of women desire. So fantasy theory could be useful in that way. Another psychological theory that can be useful is the idea of catharsis, that fans continue to engage in some of the behaviors, things like role playing and interactive performances, trying to recapture that original moment, the experience of what it was like to discover the work for the first time. And so if you continue to do the same behaviors, you can tap into that cathartic feeling. You can get some of that positive feeling you had from the first time you experienced the material. We also use fan materials to build the self. So we always are having to try to construct who we are, how we want to present ourselves, and identifying yourself as a superhero fan or a romance novel fan or a sports team fan, all that kind of stuff, that gives you some kind of identity. It tells people what kind of person you are like in some ways, and allows you to bond with other people. And so a lot of times we choose things that we become fans of, often because we are really attracted and interested in the material itself. But one of the things that being a fan allows us to do, and the reason we do things like cosplaying and putting posters up on your wall and putting figurines and DVDs and all this kind of stuff in your shelves, is because doing that allows you to communicate clearly, this is who I am, this is the stuff that matters to me, this is how I want to present myself. And the final sort of psychological theory is cognitive theory. We can develop distinguish between two kinds of knowing, practical and connected, and reading magazines, communicating with others in groups, kind of helps us get ideas about how to create this ideal self by giving us data about other people's emotions and problems. And so people can use the stuff that they gain from their consumption of these media texts to learn how to operate within their own lives. They can use that material, watching people deal with these problems and what solutions they tried out can give you ideas about what you could do in your own life. Along with psychological theories, we also have a couple of political theories. The first of these is the idea of utopia, or alternative worlds. And so popular stories in this sense can can serve as a means of hoping for an idealized future. And so this is a more complicated and well-supported version of the idea that people read and get involved in pop culture texts because they're trying to escape. And there's hopes that this kind of material could lead to political activity, that if you want the world to be like the stories that you're reading, if you want this utopia vision of like the Star Trek universe where we're all united and working together and trying to solve big problems, then maybe you'll try to actually make those changes in your own life. Another political theory is the idea of poaching. This is a term that's used for fan activities in the sense that they are taking mainstream products and turning them into their own, or they're turning them into sort of political works based on their own terms. And so poaching in the sense of you're taking the material that is part of mass culture, and then you're using that as an expression of your own beliefs and a way of talking about and building out other ideas. And so you can take things that even aren't necessarily meant to be political and turn them into different ideas. And then finally, a sociological theory that we can use is the idea of alternative communities, that our recreation can help us find different ways of engaging with people, connecting with others. So you may feel excluded from mainstream culture. You may not feel like you have a way of sharing yourself, but you can go to a convention and cosplay and connect with people in a different way. You can go to a Rocky Horror Picture Show and dress up in a costume and do crazy stuff during the showing and feel connected to other people. So those are just a few ways of trying to offer explanations for fan behavior. And again, remember, it's not about trying to find the one and only true way of understanding fans. Instead, it's about using different parts of these explanations to build a more cohesive understanding.